The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. Introduction. In April of 1968, I wrote an essay for the San Francisco Chronicle on the eve of the publication of The Last Unicorn. I was living in a rickety, unheated shack on a redwood hillside just a few miles out of Santa Cruz with my young family, one dog, one pigeon, the dog's faithful lifelong buddy, and a cat population that could best be described as in perpetual flux. I wrote The Last Unicorn there, and hated the book when I was done. Saw it as a complete failure, an embarrassment. I hated it for at least a year. Then, as I tried to describe in that essay, reprinted here for the first time, a thing happened. A few nights ago, I read from The Last Unicorn in a Santa Cruz coffee house, and discovered that I liked the book. It was the Greenwood chapter, the scene introducing the outlaw Captain Coley and his miserable men. People laughed, and that was pleasing enough. My idea of hell for a writer would feature the eternal writing and revising of something that's supposed to be funny. But that wasn't it. Somewhere, literally between one sentence and another, I realized that I'd written a good book. I've been a little dizzy since, and I still am. It's very strange, living with a book, not only during the writing, but long after, when you begin to find out what you wrote, and have to come to terms with it. I began writing The Last Unicorn in the summer of 1962, gave it up at about 85 pages, bored and uninventive, made the journey that became I See by My Outfit, and finally got back to work on that unicorn story. One chapter was salvaged from that bad start, and one song. I made it up as I went along, trying, as much as I ever told myself what I was doing, to keep my options open as long as possible, deliberately painting myself into corners, laying groundwork for developments that might or might not develop as the story and its people felt like it. When I felt like writing a little song, or just rhyming something, and those songs are the little love affairs for me, the raisins in the cookie, I wrote a song, and when I knew that it was time for someone to join the story, that it couldn't go any further until a new character came on the scene, I waited, gambling that it would be the right somebody who showed. Schmendrick the Magician wandered into the tale out of bedtime stories I used to tell my eldest daughter, and I've had a favorite painting of unicorns in bulls since I was 15. The cat is one of ours. I'm not sure where the other people and beings in the tale came from, though I make my guesses. I had to wait a long time for King Haggard. For all that spontaneity, the truth is that The Last Unicorn was a grubby, sweaty, joyless job of work, except now and then. It was squeezed and twisted out of an imagination that never felt as though it had very much to give. I went through black cycles of depression and self-disgust, lightened by occasional periods when I felt that the book had been a bad idea in the first place, and at least it wasn't as though I was messing up something pretty. But most of the time I knew that the unicorn, Schmendrick, Lear, Molly Grew, and all the rest were alive, and that I was failing them. I don't know for sure that that's the worst feeling an author can have, being still new to the trade, but it's the worst one I know so far. The writing of fantasy is best left to those who have nothing better to do, as is indicated by the fairy tales of otherwise gifted writers like Robert Graves and John Ciardi. It isn't so much the difficulty of doing it right, without falling off the tightrope into the cold pits of allegory or mindless whimsy. The weary thing is that even if you bring it off, all you've done is write a fantasy. And so what? Life is dangerous, and escapism has become a dirty word. I feel the same way, being a child of my own critical times. I'd write the other stuff, the real books if I could. Plenty nitty-gritty. If I could. But I'm with Disraeli when he says, "Madam, when I want to read a good book, I write one." I wrote The Last Unicorn for me to read, and for no other reason that I understand just yet. And when I was through with it, at last, and off the tightrope, I couldn't bear to look at the thing. People whose opinions meant a good deal to me liked it, and I was glad, but it didn't make any difference. I couldn't see anything but me hacking away on the text, without grace, without love, without pleasure. Hell of a way to treat a unicorn. But it's all right. It's all right. It's a good book. I know that so securely now that nothing else matters, even if The Last Unicorn is on the 77-cent tables before school is out. The damn book is full of happiness, and I don't know where it came from. I swear I don't remember putting it in. I have been recounting that story about the story to readers and live audiences for the last 40 years. I've never said it better, or even as well as I did then, and I'm not going to try to improve on it now. It touches me deeply, in ways I don't usually talk about, and which I mostly forgot until I reread the piece, when preparing this new edition. I was 29 years old when I wrote that essay, trying to learn how to take care of a wife and 3 small children, and all those cats, on a freelancer's income. Money went a good deal further then, and a book advance would carry you for a while, but even so, there were many months when I couldn't come up with even $100 for rent. And the electricity would go out for weeks during the rainy season, and we'd have to take refuge with my sister-in-law in town. If the car would start, and if we could get down the washed-out, boulder-strewn mountain road, that was the world in which The Last Unicorn was written. And yet, a year or so after the Chronicle essay was published, when we had moved to a larger house in the Watsonville area, a mansion by comparison with the Red Shack, I was the only one at all wistful about leaving. It took several trips back to load all the animals into the car, and each time I'd walk the empty house and the wild land around it, all paved and gentrified today, lingering in the half-ruined stable in the woods where I slogged away for so long at that damn book, in the back bedroom where I worked at night, or in bad weather, in the kitchen, where I scared the hell out of myself one afternoon creating the Harpy, in my oldest daughter's bedroom, where I used to tell her the adventures of the world's worst magician every night. I was happy there. Frightened, God, yes, but happy. I hadn't known until that night, in the coffee house, when I could finally read my own book and see it for what it was. Peter S. Beagle, Oakland, California, April 2007. To the memory of Dr. Ulfert Dapper, who saw a wild unicorn in the Maine woods in 1673, and for Robert Nathan, who has seen one or two in Los Angeles.